The answer is not the same for all of us. The exact same food, relationship, environmental factor, plug-in air freshener, we all react different.
Yes.
Knowing what the big priorities are and at least dealing with that.
Yep.
And now your 80% of the job is done. Now you're just fine tuning.
Why is it that one person takes a supplement and swears that it changed their life, and the same supplement is taken by another person and they feel terrible or it does nothing at all? Today, I'm bringing back on my friend Kashif Khan, and we're going to talk about the blueprint of the body beyond just supplements, beyond just the cut and paste genetic information that's out there. And we really wanted to touch on the topic of perimenopause because I know I have a lot of ladies in perimenopause. And one thing that he said that I absolutely agree with is that if you're in perimenopause and you are considering doing hormone replacement therapy, I think having the information about how your body from a genetic blueprint is going to be helpful for you. So if you're interested in that, make sure you stay tuned to the show. And if you are interested in attending a Q&A with Cash, we are holding one on July the 10th, and the information for that will be down in the show notes. Now, if you can't come live, just sign up and we will send you the replay for that. I had a masterclass that Cash did for the ladies in my private community, and they're still raving about it. They're still talking about how much they loved it. And so that's why I've brought Cash back here today. And I also wanted to dive a little bit deeper on the topic of hormones and hormone replacement. And again, like I said in the very beginning, why some people feel great, it works fantastic for them, and why some women just don't. So if that interests you, stay tuned. And thank you so much for watching. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Super excited to have a repeat guest here today, Kashif Khan. We're going to talk about hormones. We're going to talk about individuality, and it's a different conversation that I think is happening everywhere on the internet. So, welcome back to the podcast.
Pleasure. Good to see you again.
Yeah. And there, I mean, the big reason I brought you back is because we did a kind of a hormone chat. Gosh, maybe that was like 8 months ago or so.
Mhm.
And then you did a master class for my community, and the women in my group are just like still raving about it. And
Yeah,
then all the other ones are like, we missed it. We want to do another one. So we are
yeah,
going to do that. If you guys are watching, there'll be a link in the show notes and in the pinned comment if you want to come to. I think it's July 10th that we're doing another webinar. So we're going to have that available for people.
yeah. It was an awesome day. We spent like 9 hours together going through every aspect of. So everyone showed up with their DNA in their hand, their DNA results, and we walked through everything from hormones, which obviously was a big deal, to personalized diet, personalized fitness. I would say one of the big aha moments for everybody that they weren't expecting was when we walked through the neural mapping and their how they perceive the world and how their brain works. And that floored people because it's like you are describing me to a T. How do you know this, right? And
Yeah.
and that's not that just the novelty of it, but it's understanding that what we think is right and wrong is just perspective. We see things differently. And when there's friction that creates stress, anxiety, trauma, fight or flight, your nervous system is overly engaged. It's often just, I have a superpower in my brain. I'm wired to do something. I'm wired to be an entrepreneur. I'm wired to be an accountant. I'm wired to be a homemaker, whatever it is, but I'm doing something else. And now it doesn't feel good. And
Yes.
we helped everyone unlock their mental superpower and understand who they are and how they interact with them. But to me, that was a big aha moment that really everyone loved.
Yeah, I had a lot of ladies in my group that also had their husbands to come
Right.
in, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, my entire marriage, like looking at both of us, now
Yeah.
makes complete sense as to why we've chosen specific roles in the marriage and why when we have disagreements, like it comes down to this wiring." So, and
Yeah.
that was true with us also because you did
Yes.
with me and my husband, and now I'm like, I call him the I'm like, oh, there's your serial killer genes coming out again.
And it's kind of like both of you guys have these interesting nuances that if you were to put them together, either equals this perfect marriage of like we support each other's other half, or it's like total friction if you don't understand it, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, your husband has this gene pathway that causes him to break down his dopamine way too fast. And so it's very hard for him to be present in pleasure or reward. It's very hard for him
Mhm.
to experience satisfaction. And it's very easy for him to be the warrior that just does without thinking. And also
Yeah.
not experience remorse, which again, put him in an entrepreneurial role, a sales role, a leadership role. These are all incredible tools. Put him in a role where maybe it's like more about pleasure, TV, drinking, whatever. You could, excuse me, very easily become addicted and not feel so well. So the context changes the outcome. Then there's you, another guinea pig, right? Where you had this really interesting pathway where adrenaline is deployed when you're in a moment of like major impact, major
Hmm.
stimulus. And it was designed for our ancestors, like tiger is chasing me. I need to run fast, faster than I've ever run before. So adrenaline surges gives you your superpowers that you don't normally have access to. So your genes don't allow you to regulate adrenaline properly, which means when there is that moment of major impact, first of all, you're always on the chase. Like you
Hmm.
beat it. Like you're willing to like sit at the edge of the cliff and experience that where just for somebody else is 5 feet back and that's already too much for them, right? But second
Hmm.
thing is because you're surging all this adrenaline all the time, your brain sees all of these major impactful moments as important and potentially life-threatening. And so you do a really, really good job, maybe too good, of remembering what things feel like. So your brain is very much wired by imprinting emotion, and the next time you're reminded of a scenario or a person or an event, you feel it like it's happening again. And
Hmm.
most people don't do that, right?
Yep.
And you're doing it to an extreme, which
Yep.
once again could be an incredible tool of no surprise. Your community loves you because they can feel that you care and they can feel your sense of purpose. They can feel like, no, this person cares about the outcome, right? Because you do. But at the same time, it's like I can't get past this person. I'm holding the grudge. I'm never talking to the
Hmm.
guy again. Your brain filters like this is how they made me feel and I can't let go.
Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
empathy, emotional intelligence, this wisdom about you, this connection, but also like I hold the grudge, go away. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I've had to work on a lot in adulthood is just letting things go and not holding a grudge. I think my team that helps me with my emails and those things, they don't even like let me go in my inbox. They're like, okay, you're not allowed in there because they know how it impacts me. Not that
Yeah.
I like, so someone's minding that stuff and they'll message me like, how do you want me to handle this? Or how do you want me to respond to this? Because they know I get so emotionally involved in
Yeah.
messages that I get and emails that I get that I will literally make myself sick. They're like,
Yeah.
nope, it's off limits.
Yeah.
So
And that's
yeah.
exactly the path is let's unpack your mental map.
Hmm.
Who are you? What were you designed for? And once you understand that and you start to do who you were designed to be, you use incredible words like success, achievement, etc. And if you're not in the right context and you do things that you weren't designed to do, then all of a sudden it's like anxiety, depression, burnout, procrastination, all these negative words come out. And we find that over and over and over again, people that are stuck in trauma that are stuck in anxiety, which by the way is step one to healing anything, right?
Hmm.
Nervous system regulation. It's not because they have these things, it's because they have a superpower that they didn't recognize or understand, and they were in the wrong context that wasn't aligned to that superpower, right? And
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love this. And that's what the feedback I got from a lot of my group members is like, this just changes the way that I'm going to be doing things, the way I view things, the relationship I have with my partner. And I think it's such valuable information because when most people kind of get into this work of looking at DNA, it's to sell supplements. There's a supplement company behind it. That's how I kind of started looking at genes in the first place, as someone charged me like $7,000 to do a genetic mapping and then gave me a supplement protocol, which by the way was bunk. Didn't help anything, actually made things worse. So this is different because I think it's the information about your personality, potentially information about how you might handle specific diets, hormones. That was a big, like when I found out that I can't really detox estrogen properly, everything made sense. I'm like, oh, this is why I used to be doubled over in pain every single month. This is why I had like surgery to remove fibroids. This is why I had a horrible time losing weight and I carried all the weight in one area.
Hmm.
until I fixed, do all the things that I teach about. Now I don't have those issues at all. But I didn't know that about myself. And now going into perimenopause and potentially looking at if I want to experiment with HRT, I know that's like a
Yeah.
caution, huge
It has to
caution.
be highly personalized for you. And I can tell you, do you know Dr. Jen Simmons? She does the breast cancer work. Have you heard of her? I thought
I've heard the name before. I
I just
have,
figured
yeah.
we're all in the same world, so I figured you may have seen her somewhere. But so Dr. Jen Simmons is a MD, breast cancer oncologist, but she's also an integrative health specialist. So she does kind of both sides. And all she works on is breast cancer. And so she reached out to me, it was like 2 years ago, saying that can we do like a genetic class for women that have like their second, third, fourth bout that are trying to understand why? Because this is
Mhm.
challenging. Like she can help them get better, but she doesn't know what's causing it. And so when we did that class, 25% of the women, remember, mostly postmenopausal, I had to tell them that it was their HRT that caused the cancer. And I'm not saying HRT causes cancer. I'm saying that you have to personalize it and not
Mhm.
get it wrong. It's like off the
Yep.
shelf, you're taking a risk. Personally, I believe every single person listening here can take hormones, but many of you need to highly personalize how you do it, both
Yep.
what you're adding to your body and detox support. And Sarah, you're one of those people. So what's going on?
Yeah.
When you make estrogens, after making the estrogen, this is the thing that isn't spoken of. We believe that estrogen is estrogen, then you're done. Testosterone is testosterone, then you're done. That's not true. After you make these hormones, there's metabolites of these hormones, and they don't get looked at. And the metabolites of them, some of them are beneficial, some are highly inflammatory, right? And there's one in particular called 4-hydroxyestrogen, which again, your monthly cycle, progesterone gets converted into testosterone, gets converted into estrogen. There's genes that determine how much of each bucket you fill along the way. So how dominant are you in various hormones? Then after you make your estrogen, bucket is full. Now you have to take that estrogen and convert it into metabolites that get cleared through the period, right? And what you do is you're making a little bit too much of the 4-hydroxyestrogen, which means not only were you not detoxifying your estrogen properly, as you learned, right? But you're making
Mhm.
a version that is really inflammatory. And now you add on top of that, we live in a hormone disrupting world where
Yep.
everything you touch and breathe and smell is mimicking estrogens as they enter your body and overloading this pathway that leads to toxic estrogen. And so what I showed them was some of you women, 25% that were on that call, just like you, Sarah, make
Mhm.
this toxic estrogen. And when you add estradiol into that story, which is the sort of go-to what you would use for BHRT, this gene CYP1B1 sees the estradiol and directly instructs converting it into more 4-hydroxyestrogen. So you have to know the cascade of where things end up. It's like
Mhm.
I add something to my body doesn't mean that's as what it stays. There's
Right.
genes that convert it into other stuff, right?
Right.
And so for you, we would have to say, okay, go ahead hormones, but you're going low on estradiol. You're going maybe leaning towards more estriol, which actually bypasses that pathway, and you're going to need DIM, I3C, calcium diglucarate support to whatever underutilized hormones there are get removed from your body. And
Mhm.
the beautiful thing you do with hydrogen already that will help too. So it's kind of like how do you personalize the protocol, but also add the detox or support so that you're not overwhelmed by metabolites that cause inflammation.
When I say we have tried every clean laundry detergent out there, believe me, and having a child with eczema and another child who's extremely sensitive to environmental toxins makes me very, very picky about these sorts of things and looking at ingredients. So that's why I was super excited to find Truly Free and take advantage of their 300 free loads deal. Now, typically they only run this deal on Black Friday, but they've extended this offer through July the 7th. So if you want to get this deal, it comes to about 17 cents per load. Not only is it non toxic and has the best ingredients, but there is also an amazing deal to get 300 free loads and basically only make you pay about 17 cents per load. So make sure to check out this amazing deal from Truly Free. Link will be down in the show notes and you'll understand why it's my choice for non toxic laundry detergent. Not only does it get the job done, but it keeps my family safe from environmental toxins. Make sure to grab this deal. They only offer it on Black Friday, but they've given it to me for this summer and it will expire on July 7th. Yeah. And I think that's a really important message for any of the women that are listening, because I do have quite a few women who are in perimenopause and they're like, do I try the hormones? Are they bad for me? Am I going to get cancer? These are real fears, even though there's all these menopause doctors that I call them the estrogen brigade. They're like, estrogen, estrogen, estrogen. That's what you need. That's what you need. If you
Yeah.
don't take it, you're going to get dementia. Your bones are going to break. You're gonna have high cholesterol, your metabolism's gonna break, this, that, and the other, heart disease. And I understand kind of where they're coming from, but they're not talking to women like me. I had like a bad feeling about it already because I'm just like heavy periods, fibroids, estrogen dominance, like lots of weight in my hips and thighs, and like just could never lose it. Once I eliminated all of the toxic beauty care products, I changed my diet, filtered my air, filtered my water. Like I did literally everything possible. I was using like perfumes and, toxic lotions. And now it's like beef tallow, no perfume. Like I've done so many things over the last decade plus. The problem is gone. I don't have that. But now I'm like perimenopause, like, yeah, I know my estrogens, like starting to do this. You know, should I bump up sauna? And like you said, you have to be more cognizant of the detox. And that's why I inhale hydrogen every single day. That's why I, do sauna 3 times a week. I still watch my diet. I don't wear plastic leggings. I used to wear the plastic leggings. I just switched everything out about a year ago. So
Yeah. And so this is the question of, so some people ask, like, why would there even be a gene that makes something toxic in my body?
good
Like, why
question.
is that even an option, right?
Yeah.
And so because our DNA hasn't changed in a quarter million years, 250,000 years, we're wired like cave people. Your body doesn't know what this modern reality looks like. It still thinks you live in a cave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your biology is designed for that reality, which means there were no hormone disruptors. And so a
Right.
little bit of inflammation is good. A little bit of a woman that makes an inflammatory metabolite may have a little bit more inflammation in the uterine lining, builds back better, easier to get pregnant. It was actually a
Yep.
useful tool, right? High cholesterol genes, which now point to Alzheimer's, used to be if I go to battle, I'm going to repair quickly because inflammation gets reduced by cholesterol, right? So we have these unique nuances and genetic sort of variants that were meant to protect us in the context of the past. Then,
Yep.
and this is why the things you're doing, get rid of all this stuff. You change the context. Now that same inflammatory gene, which could have caused cancer, may actually help you, right? It may actually be beneficial because that's what it was supposed to do, and the
Yep.
context shifted. So, and but that being said, everyone's sort of prescription is different, right?
Yep.
And the whole intention is what's broken in my biology? If I were to think, what is DNA? DNA is
Mm-hmm.
an instruction manual in every single one of your cells that tells your cells how to do all of its jobs. So, kidney cell is reading the kidney page, heart cell is reading the heart page, and doing the job as per the instruction. So, if you read the instruction manual, you know what jobs are not being instructed properly. And then if you take that, sometimes that's good, right? Sometimes, like in your case, the job of regulating adrenaline isn't instructed properly, but that's great for how you care for people,
Mm-hmm.
deep purpose to your work, research, you care, right? It's challenging for how you deal with trauma, pain, and people, right? So that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing. Same thing with your hormones, the exact same estrogen dominance that allows you to be strong, fertile, beautiful hair and skin, also can create fibroids, breast cancer, endometriosis. The list goes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and all of this stuff, what we've learned, because the reason why we know what I'm saying is we spent 3 years working with 7,000 patients in a research study. So one by one, we said, give us your DNA and tell us all of your problems. And we partnered with a bunch of functional health clinics, and we kind of took on the people that they couldn't figure out, right? And so in that work, we kept figuring out that there's these unique anomalies that aren't addressed. And in that work, we continue to find that people who were struggling most were the women,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was like 80% of the dementia we saw was in the women, 80% of the autoimmunity was in women, 80% of the rheumatoid arthritis was in women. It just, the list kept going. And so we skewed towards researching that more and more and more. And we then started to see that there's these anomalies that when you're dealing with general population, there may be a certain gene variant that is infrequent. Then you put a room together of a bunch of women saying that I'm stuck, I don't feel good, nothing my doctor's doing is working, I don't know how to exercise, da da da. And this the same stuff keeps popping up that in the general population isn't so common.
Mm.
And so we see that it's the same problem. So we've gotten really good at knowing how to fix the problems that the healthcare system isn't even looking for. They're
Yeah.
just rare genetic variants. And so, anyways, that's what everyone has been raving about from the class you talked about, is that they open their eyes to like, oh, there's problems that I actually need to address that have nothing to do with the symptom that I feel.
Right, exactly. Because they're like you said, we're not living in the world that this DNA was originally meant to live in. There's nothing natural about the world we live in today. I mean, we drive a car, that's not natural. You could try to live a natural life, but you're still going to have to probably be in a car at some point. You're going to have to be indoors at some point with air that's, not necessarily the best quality. There's just literally no way to avoid modern life. So I think that having kind of a roadmap to understand how your body actually might react to this toxic soup that we all live in, just can't get away from it. I think that knowledge is power.
So,
Because now I'm like, okay, well, if I did want to get to the point where I tried HRT, I would know not to just take the first prescription. I would want to specialize it. And I think this conversation, I definitely have a lot of women. I'd love to talk about progesterone. I know we did that in the last webinar that we did the podcast and people could come to the webinar. So if you're watching, if you want to come to the webinar and ask questions, then that link will be down in the show notes. There's no charge for that. But what's up with the women who can't handle progesterone? Because while I say I'm not doing really HRT, I have been taking progesterone like that. I love it. Don't take it away from me. My husband a couple weeks ago was like, do you need me to go get your progesterone from the store? I was like, please. He's like, I can tell you didn't have it. I'm like, please. So I love my
so,
progesterone, but why do some women not, they can't tolerate it?
so everything you add to your body, there's a gene that decides what to do with it.
Mm,
How effectively you utilize it, get into the cell, do you turn it into other things? So there's a gene pathway called CYP17A1 that when you have progesterone in your body is responsible to determine how much of it you convert into testosterone.
mm,
And so some people have, like yourself, an ongoing longer exposure to the progesterone itself, and you're benefiting from what you intended of why you add that to your body. Some women or even men add progesterone to their body, and it's like all of a sudden rapid conversion into testosterone, right?
mm,
And some of those women, there's a gene pathway called SRD5A2 that will take your testosterone and convert it into something called dihydrotestosterone, which is 16 times more powerful than regular testosterone. And so if that's who you are, you add progesterone to that story thinking you just gave yourself the benefit of progesterone, but all of a sudden your body's turning it into testosterone and then a version that is highly potent, and all of a sudden you're angry, you're growing chin hair, maybe even back hair, you have acne, you have crazy pain and cramping, ovarian cysts potentially,
mm.
hair loss, all sorts of stuff, which is like the opposite of what progesterone is supposed to do. It's like, why doesn't this work? And then sometimes the answer is maybe you need more, right? That's
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I've heard people say to megadose it in some
yeah,
situations,
yeah. And
but
then
not
you just
all, right?
yes, and then you end up just taking the story I said and overwhelming it with even more, and like literally patches and clumps of hair coming out, right? And so then the doctor, oh, maybe you have an autoimmune condition, maybe there's mold in your body, maybe that could be true, but just the simple fact that there's two genes out of the 22,000 that can tell us when you add progesterone to your body, what's going to happen, right? And for whom it's good and for who it's going to be a disaster.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what about women that take progesterone and have like severe insomnia? It's basically the same thing.
Same thing, yeah. So you
Yeah.
can cause so the byproducts of hormone metabolism like DHT, like 4-OH and 16-OH estrogen cause a lot of inflammation. And one of the first signs that you're in an inflamed state is you can't sleep. And
Hmm.
it's just the same when we work on people for whatever reason. Somebody might come to us with Lyme disease or an autoimmune condition or just menopause and wants balance, right? Whenever we start working on that thing, almost every time one of the first things the person will say is I'm sleeping better,
Yeah.
even though that wasn't what we were trying to even fix. Because when you reduce inflammation and regulate all the systems, sleep just gets better.
Yeah.
So when your sleep is broken, It's not just I have a sleep problem. It's there's where's the inflammation coming from? Where's the autoimmunity coming from? Why is the biology broken? Right?
Yep.
So it's more of a check engine light and warning sign that something else is going on, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, going to the detox stuff you were talking about, which I think is a huge deal, um, even that can be hyper personalized. So it's like, okay,
Mm.
we understand. Most of us now know we live in a world that we are not designed for, from food to chemicals to cosmetics, personal care products, all of it. And if I were to take your gene profile and the standard work to be done, there's a lot. There's like you said, air filtration, purging your clothing, like everything. Then there's some people that might say, I don't have the budget for all that, or I don't have the time for all that, or just give me the priority.
Hmm.
If I were to answer that question for you, the way you deal with airborne toxins, you know, what you're breathing is actually pretty good, right?
Mm.
The way
That's
you
good.
deal with, yeah, like personal care products and things that you put on your skin is also pretty good. Your big red flag is there's a gene pathway that regulates the defense of your gut and your gut's
Oh,
ability to bind, collect, and remove toxins. And it's not even about good or bad. You're missing the gene. It doesn't even exist.
yep.
So there's a really unique phenomenon called a copy number variation, where there's certain genes which happen to be some of the most important detox genes that you could be possibly missing.
Mm.
And now, if that's the case, what happens? There literally is no defense. Your gut doesn't have the ability to remove, separate, and collect toxins from whatever you ate, which means leaky gut, IBS,
Yep.
Crohn's, colitis, right? All of that. And it's as if whatever you're eating, the pesticides, packaging, whatever, you're just putting it into your bloodstream directly. You
Hmm.
might as well just
Hmm.
inject it, right?
Yep.
Because so, but some people don't have this problem, and so
Right.
the two people living in the same household completely reacting differently to the meal they just ate because of their ability to detoxify what came along with it, and that's for you the big priority.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's why I think on carnivore diet, magically my gut got better, my stomach was flat for the first time in my life, my skin got better. Like it was literally magic for me. Now there were side effects of eliminating carbs and not supporting my body in other ways eventually, but I think that makes absolute sense. And I feel like my husband might have had a similar situation with his genes also.
Yeah, he
And
did. Yeah,
yeah, we were talking like, because the whole thing with like the kids getting, you know, the my producer's been like editing out half my episodes lately because I use the V word, you
yeah,
know, the things in your arms.
yeah,
Um, like edited 30 minutes out of my episode a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to try to be careful. But the reason why I think my daughter had the reaction that she did and now has profound autism was because I think the both of us combined, that genetic storm passed that to her, and it made her a lot more susceptible to having such a horrible reaction to this, you know, quote unquote, safe and effective intervention, where her cousins, you know, my sisters, their kids, they've had all those interventions and
yeah.
they're okay. Well, you know,
And this is where that
they don't have the
argument
problems my daughter has, you know?
that's why that argument still exists because, well, what was the problem? Why doesn't everybody have a problem?
Right.
You know, and so
Right.
by individual. So yeah, here's the big challenge. Metals and Tylenol. So the serums, the adjunct is full of lead, aluminum, all sorts of stuff. These metals are meant to trigger an immune response,
Mm-hmm.
which for obvious reason, it's meant to do that, right? But there are pathways where we can predict which child can actually bind and clear those metals and which child can't. And like you said,
Mm.
there's a challenge there, right?
Yep.
Second layer, and this is a bit of an irony that is it's sad that it's not taught so much medically, but what happens if that is your child? Okay, they probably don't feel so well within a day or even the same day, and potentially they'll get a fever, right? Their body
Yep.
starts reacting and they get a fever.
Yep.
And now the answer is call the doctor, give them some Tylenol,
Tylenol,
right? So what happens when you take the Tylenol? The
glutathione.
active glutathione, exactly. The active molecule in Tylenol is called acetaminophen. That's the drug you're actually taking. In order for your body to process it, it uses the glutathione pathway to get it to the right place and in the right active form, etc., which is the exact same pathway that your body's trying to rely on to you get these metals out, which is the exact same pathway that you're missing 30% of, and your
Mm-hmm.
husband too, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
this it's like perfect storm where if we knew this in advance, and it's not just in terms of behavioral development, and it's like any condition, any disease,
Yep.
any like we know what it's inflammation, step one, but we don't ask where did the inflammation come from.
Right.
The answer is not the same for all of us. The exact same food, relationship, environmental factor, plug-in air freshener, we all react different.
Yes.
Knowing what the big priorities are and at least dealing with that.
Yep.
And now your 80% of the job is done. Now you're just fine tuning,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I keep my diet as clean as I can. I will, have some things I enjoy every now and then, but when I do, I'm supporting myself with a really good high quality butyrate, digestive enzymes, and then I'll even do like nattokinase and serrapeptase that night. Like I'm like, I really just clean this up because I don't get to just live like everyone else. I think when in regards to my gut, like I can do a little damage, but if I'm not careful, I'll end up feeling pretty horrible and having bad repercussions whenever it feels like everyone else is just out
Yeah.
there doing whatever they want. Like it's real, and that's why I feel like my son, even though we didn't do interventions with him, I feel like there was a trauma element of being around my daughter and her uh starting to have seizures when he was a baby. And then also he had those genes as well. It's like, well, of course you're gonna get eczema um in a traumatic, stressful environment. Like it makes sense because we were just like, how could this have happened? We tried to do everything right for him. And it's not just one thing. Like we're there's a thing about like, oh, it's just it's just the shots, that's causing all of this. And it's like, y'all, that's very simple minded to think it's just the one thing, and that I see a lot of people that they think that their kids are going to be immune from ever being sick or having problems if they just don't do the schedule. And I think a lot of parents get a very rude awakening if that, they don't look at the entire lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's one layer of exactly what you're saying. All of it needs to be considered. And then there's
Hmm.
another layer of just hyper prioritizing the big broken biology bits. And
Yep.
that's what understanding the genome helps us do. Like in your son, like we could have known that he's wired like mom and trauma is a big deal for him.
Hmm.
And irrespective of how somebody else feels, he's going to take something as a major emotional burden, even if somebody else doesn't. You can't say to him, it's not a big deal. He doesn't see it that way,
Hmm.
right? And you can't say to him, let it go. He can't let it go. His brain is wired
Right.
to be the wise person, to be the emotionally intelligent person. But in a context like that, yes, it will create trauma. So now when you're in a state of trauma, what happens? Fight or
Yep.
flight,
Yep.
right?
Cortisol, inflammation.
Cortisol, inflammation, your nervous system starts to say, this is not regular problems, this is battle. I'm going to turn my immune system off. I'm going to turn my gut function off. I'm going to engage high levels of inflammation so that to make sure if I get beat up or stabbed that I can recover quickly. And it prioritizes that. The utilization of energy in your body shifts to other things that we're not supposed to be on. Your blood flow is more like fists and feet, so you're ready for battle, as opposed to your organs to provide nutrients and detoxify. And then you wonder why somebody that is stuck in a bad nervous system state, anxiety, stress, trauma, is more prone to a chronic disease. Not because the
Right.
trauma causes it, because the recovery is shut off. There's
Right.
data around kids that grow up in trauma are 8 to 14 times, depending on which disease, greater likelihood of getting those diseases.
Hmm.
Again, trauma doesn't cause it. The state prevents the recovery that allows the disease to set in when it shouldn't have. And that's
Yep.
why, again, the eczema, like you're doing everything right, the skin is like check engine light saying high inflammation levels. Something's going on here,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
this is now again working on his nerves first. And I would say the order of operations when we're doing stuff is normally we typically start with nervous system first. It's like understand your brain and how you're wired and find your superpower, go do that. And if we see genes that point to stress, anxiety, trauma, we're going to unwind some of those things and calm the nerves down. That's one. The next place we go is typically the gut. And whether it's autoimmune driving, whether it's leaky and inflamed, whether there's certain enzymes you don't make for certain foods, like we have to tell some people that they just can't be a vegan even though they want to because they can't thrive off of plant proteins. And some people will say, go ahead. Like you do a really good job of using beans and lentils as fuel.
I think
You
I'm one of those people who can't do the beans and lentils.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And so then you hyper personalize and deal with the gut. And by the time you've done these two things, and you're probably a few weeks into the journey, whatever the thing is usually becomes a smaller version of itself already
Mhm.
because the recovery is now possible because there's no fight or flight. The gut's not causing systemic inflammation anymore. And now you have a smaller problem to fix. Now you start working on the detox response. What's the priority for you in all these various detox pathways from your mitochondria and how much cellular energy you make from your gut to your breath to metals, plastics, mold. There's genes for all that stuff, right? Which one's a
Mhm.
priority? Then when all that's done, now it's like, okay, now I have a terrain where if I start working on hormones, it's really going to work, right?
Mhm.
Like I can go start adding pills and stuff for hormones on day one, but if I'm so chock full of toxins and I'm stuck in fight or flight and high cortisol, the terrain can't benefit from that.
Right.
You walk through this sort of order, and then there's nuances in between depending on what someone's dealing with. Now you've done it in the right order, you've fixed your biology in the right order, you kind of stage this reset, and all of a sudden someone like you says that I used to look like this and now I look like this, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what the potential is. It's like, and I used to feel like this, now I feel like this. I used to be diagnosed with this, I don't have this anymore. And we have thousands of people that have those kinds of stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the empowering thing about this information and takes a lot of the fear out of things. It's like, let's get your body out of this state of chronic inflammation where you're just going to keep adding things. It's not going to solve the problem at the end of the day. But if we can really see for you what's a priority, right? For someone, it might be their indoor air quality. It might be their water quality or what they're putting on their skin. Someone else like me, it might be what they're eating and how well their gut is functioning and how much support they need there. And I think that that kind of information for someone is really powerful. So they don't feel like they're like if you look on Instagram, it's like, oh, this is dangerous. That's
Yeah.
dangerous. Now I need to be worried about this. Now like you can just freak yourself out. And I get so many people in my community with severe health anxiety, and I'm like, you're focusing on the wrong things. Like we need to like take a step back. Please just unfollow all those accounts that pull that fear up in you. It's probably not even relevant to you anyway. What what can we work on to pull back some of this inflammation, And I think that's the interesting thing about the work that you do and why I don't recommend people go out and do tons of testing and uh all of that until they've really done the foundations because they might find that you fix the foundations, you don't necessarily need to go spend all this extra money on the functional testing.
Yeah, and we find a lot of the functional testing, uh, we use it too. So I'm not saying don't do it. Like we use it, I do it
Right.
on myself. But what I'm saying is that if you haven't understood how your biology works, any lab work is telling you where are you at today in your blood,
Right.
not telling you how you got there. So let me give you a
Mhm.
simple example. Because I'm in Toronto, we do a lot of work with like NHL hockey players. There's a lot of in the off season they all come here. There's a lot of great training facilities, and I work with a lot of like coaches and chiropractors and whatever, and we work on these players, right? And there's one particular guy who was getting a lot of fractures, and they measured his vitamin D in his blood, and they said you're good, and
Mm.
you're just playing too hard. Calm down, right? So I said, okay, vitamin D in your blood, that's good, but let's go into your genes to figure out what does that actually mean for you. So, vitamin D, first of all, is the number one most important nutrient in your body that I understand, right? In terms of how many systems it affects. You have 22,000 genes in your genome, and 2,500 of them don't work without vitamin D. They need it to express. So, it's very important for all your biology. So, that's one thing. Now, our ancestors were in the sun all day.
Mm-hmm.
So, we are genetically designed to mitigate an overdose. We live the flip opposite. Some of us don't have the challenge, many of us do. There's a gene called CYP2R1 that will determine how effectively you take D2 from the sun and convert it to D3. So how much do you make? He was doing that job okay. There wasn't a problem there. So it was showing up in his blood as the right levels, right? After that, and this is where medicine ends. What's in your blood is the story. No, that's part of the story.
Nope.
Yeah. So now step two, there's a gene called VDBP that takes that activated D3 molecule and then transports it to the cell. You need it, you don't need it in your blood, you need it in the cell, connected and
Mm-hmm.
expressing a gene, right? So now something transports it. Once it gets to the cell, there's a gene called VDR that makes a receptor that grabs the vitamin D molecule and brings it up into the cell. So three-step process. I need to make it, I need to transport it, and I need to bind it. Now it's intracellular and the job gets done. He had the worst version of
Mm,
the transport gene and the binding gene. So
mm,
his blood work says your vitamin D levels are good in the blood, but intracellular, he didn't transport and bind, so he had all the symptoms of low vitamin D.
mm.
Because it doesn't matter if it's in your blood, it matters if it's in the cell. And he
Right.
wasn't doing that. So now, no surprise, this guy has a Mexican ancestry.
And he's in Toronto.
Yeah, now he's in Toronto, indoors with a long winter, and
Right.
the other question is, well, if you have a, if this is true, then why didn't it happen before? Because the context changed. He lived, he was Mexican growing up in
Yep.
Scottsdale,
Yep.
and now you're in Toronto, right? And he actually played, by the way, for Toronto. So he actually ended up living here for a while, and that's when things changed. And the solution is so simple, and this is like anything that you find functionally in your genome, there's this fear of like, oh, this gene doesn't work and I don't want to know.
Right.
The functional stuff is so easy to action. The solutions are usually so simple. You just need to know what the priorities. So for him,
Right.
it was very simple. Take your vitamin D 3 times a day. That's it. That was the solution. We also said, here's some minerals, here's some PEMF to drive repair, etc. There was other things that were done because he's a hockey player and he wanted to move faster. But the baseline answer is you don't transport and bind. So either get out in the sun multiple times a day, which is what
Mhm.
your body is asking for,
Yep.
or if you can't for whatever reason, at least as a minimum, you need multiple. Your one single dose in the morning won't work because you don't transport and bind. It's not getting to the cell, right?
Hmm.
Simple thing. Blood work didn't actually solve the problem.
Yeah, I always tell people blood work is just one little snapshot. Unless we're looking at metabolic markers, that's not those don't typically lie.
Yeah.
Your A1C is a 6.0, you're probably eating too much junk food. You're probably eating too often. That's not going to lie. But when we look at other things like B12, for instance, I'm really curious about that one because my B12 on lab work has always shown up like ridiculously off the charts high. And I don't take any B12 supplements, but
Yep.
I've had symptoms of having really low vitamin B12.
Yep.
And so
No
I'm like,
surprise.
what the heck is that all about?
No surprise. I'll tell you why. There's a system in your body called methylation,
Oh, yeah.
and methylation it's several things. We think of it as like a detox response, which is true. It's responsible for non-water soluble toxins like metal and plastics, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
why it's tied to things like behavioral development issues. So that's one. It's also responsible for nutrient conversion. How do I take a banana and extract all the stuff and get it into my cells? Things get methylated. It's
Mm-hmm.
also responsible for using the B family of vitamins to drive many, many processes in your body. So the B vitamins kind of encode or drive all these methylation genes to work properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a family of genes around B12 or cobalamin, as it's called, and for you, none of it works.
Right.
Right? And so now, when you get your B, for example, there's very specific forms of B12 that come
You
from
told me
lamb.
one to take, and I actually, I think you told me like three things to take. And
Yeah.
I haven't talked about this, but I was having tinnitus and it was so freaking annoying. I was like, this is going to drive me crazy. And of course, it's a perimenopause symptom. And you're like, no, all you need to take is these three things. And I wrote it down, took exact no more tinnitus. It's been gone, like completely gone for 2 months off these three simple supplements. And of course, the perimenopause doctors are like, no, you need estrogen. Like, I don't think that's
Yeah.
it. I don't think that's it at all.
One of the first signs of poor methylation is tinnitus. Another sign is you sort of numbing or cooling of the fingertips and toes.
And I
And
was having that too. I was like, why are my fingertips going numb? What's going on?
that's just poor methylation. And so now the doctor will say your B12 is too high. What's really true
Yes. She's like,
is
it's off the charts. Don't take any more B12. I'm like,
so what was happening? You were carnivore, eating a lot of beef probably, right? So
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
form of B12 that comes from beef, your body doesn't know how to use so well.
mm-hmm,
Your ancestors ate more goat, lamb, sheep. It's a different form of B12 that actually gets absorbed under the tongue sublingually while you're chewing. So your
mm-hmm.
gut doesn't know how to absorb B12, so it's showing up all over your body and your blood, not in the cell. And so the blood work is not telling the truth. The truth is you just needed a different form and you do it, tinnitus goes away.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I know that, tinnitus can show up in
Yeah.
perimenopause because estrogen starts dropping. We have like the lubrication of the ear canal, but I knew intuitively that that wasn't the answer for me. And then you were like, no, just take these three things. And I'm like, oh, and I
Yeah.
just realized that I told my husband yesterday, I was like, I haven't had tinnitus in like 2 months. And it was
Yeah.
keeping me up at night. I mean, it was like freaking annoying.
Yeah.
So
There you
testimonial.
go. Yeah. And now
Yeah.
here's the really cool thing about that is you know the outcome of the thing you can feel,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't know the outcome of the things that you didn't even know that were going
True.
on, right? Because when you're not methylating properly, there is not a system in your body that methylation doesn't touch.
Right.
Your mood, to your hormones, to your bone, to your skin, to everything. So whatever this check engine light was telling you, red alert, there was many other things that you didn't feel yet, right?
Yeah.
And now you're preventing all that stuff too.
Yep. And I was going to the chiropractor, like, why is this fingertip numb? I don't understand. They're like, oh, let's do an adjustment. And that would
Yeah.
help some, but then it would come back. And now I haven't had that at all, like
Yeah.
at all. So yeah. And I think that's the other thing I wanted to bring into the conversation was just awareness around this because so quickly, again, a woman of my age of perimenopause is like, no, you just need estrogen because it's the estrogen that's responsible for all these things. And maybe it does play a role and play a part in that.
Mm.
But you have to go deeper. You have to go deeper than a hormone. It's not just the hormone, it's like the system. What raw material is the system does it not have? And why is it burning through that improperly? It's not just like, let's just add this and add this. You're not a chemistry set. It's like, there's a reason why your body is doing that. And it's up to you to understand uh, why the heck is this happening? What is my blueprint that is expressing this symptom? It's not just to pour something in there. You might want to add a couple of things. Like I said, I'm taking like three things. I'm like, oh, boom, I'm all better now.
So
But
here's how to think about the disparity between what you did that worked versus the
Mhm.
medical answer of it's menopause and you need estrogen, right?
Right,
So both are true. So here's the difference
right.
between why they're both true is because those things were already there. You're a bad B12 metabolizer, need a specific form, vitamin D, mood, trauma genes, that was all there, right?
Hmm.
But you were at an age where you had optimal mitochondrial function, full cellular energy to fight the inflammation, right? And you had optimal
Hmm.
hormones,
Right.
ideal hormone context. Now, this underlying fire is brewing. It's already there. It's been there for years. Now you remove the two layers of sort of cellular strength that were preventing you to feel what's going on. And so what changed isn't that you need more estrogen. It's like the if you add more estrogen, it's again masking and hiding this problem.
Yes. Yes.
So yes,
Yes.
there's truth to if you just add estrogen, you're gonna feel better, but you still didn't remove the problem, which is gonna brew and cause a big calamity one day, right? And so we're trying to figure out what's the actual root, the foundational broken biology, where if you do that, go look at the places where people actually live a long time. Go
Yep.
look at the blue zones. Look at, Okinawa, look at Ikara, look at Sardinia. None of them are taking hormones, right?
Right.
And they're 100-year-old grandmas that are carrying their groceries home and taking care of the family. None of that. And I'm not saying hormones are bad. A lot of our
Right.
community hormones, right? I'm saying that there's so many other things you also need to think about. We have a culture of prescribe, right? Diagnose and prescribe, and that's also now going on with some of the functional tools like hormones, where that doesn't necessarily need to be step one. Step
Hmm.
one sometimes is you're just not moving enough. Step one might be you're just not getting enough protein. Step one might be your methylation is broken, your detox response is broken, and you start working on the foundational root cause biology. And then, even though estrogens are dropping, which age with grace, you should be able to, you're
Yep.
not going to have the negative outcomes of the osteoporosis and the mood issues and all if you take away the what's fueling the fire, in your case was bad methylation.
Yep. Yeah. I know I'm an undermethylator. I've known that, but it's so confusing, I think, for people to know exactly what they need to do to support themselves. And then they just start kind of cutting and pasting. And it's like, yeah, I think that's where people get really hung up is they don't understand what is going to work best for them because they saw a blog post or they saw an Instagram post where someone had this low nutrient and so they added it back in and maybe it did great for that one person because so I want everyone to know listening what I did to fix my issue may absolutely not work for you because you probably have a different blueprint than
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Um, that's what's so difficult about sharing information online is like, I really do want to help people. I really do care who listens to things. But just because someone does something, it may not turn out the same way for you. That's
Yeah.
why I just love teaching the foundations because I've never had
Yeah.
anyone have a problem from eating regular meals, reducing stress, and getting sunlight and going to sleep. It's like
Yeah.
win-win for everyone in every situation.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
the fact that we still have to teach that tells you how broken our culture and beliefs are around health and
true.
wellness. We were taught,
Exactly.
yeah, we were taught for far too long, go do whatever you want, and when something breaks, call a doctor, right?
Right. Right.
And why break? Why need that?
We'll get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you agree with me on this. I have been feeling more and more, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. And I share the thing about myself having the tinnitus and the weird like fingertip thing because I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I'm fallible. Things are going to happen. But I feel that perimenopause is this big thing that people are talking about now. And what you've said just boom, just makes perfect sense. It's almost like a report card. It's like you're showing up and you're getting a report card. If you're under methylating, if you're nutrient deficient, if you have some sort of imbalance or a blueprint where you're living against that blueprint, it's going to show up for you at this point in your life. You may have been able to mask it and push it down, but when you get to that age where things are kind of just shifting and changing as they're supposed to, um, I think you're going to suffer that much more if you're living against your biology.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And especially for the people that are stuck, like I'm doing everything right. Why am
Yep.
I still not feeling good? Because the things you're doing, you're maybe solving the wrong problem, right?
Yep.
And the really cool thing is when you actually start to solve the right problem, it's usually so simple. It's some nutrient deficiency, it's some supplement that causes the gene expression. Sometimes it's just exercise. There's some women where literally I look at their genetic profile and I say, literally, all you need is a little bit of Pilates. Like, go do
Mm-hmm.
Pilates because you have really good genes around testosterone and androgen receptors, and we know that stretching under resistance activates the AR gene, which is the androgen receptor gene, and you're going to balance your hormones just by doing that. And that's it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to take anything, you don't need to add anything, you're just moving the wrong way. You're
Mm-hmm.
you were given this hormone profile because of how your ancestors moved. Were they farmers? Were they warriors? Were they royalty? Right? And now your hormones are expecting you to do the same thing. And if you're not moving that way, you're not you remember a hormone is an ingredient that fuels your body development, your muscle development, your skin, your hair. And in as much as we think of them as like reproductive, which is why we talk about menopause and PMS and prostate issues, whatever, they're also body design. They're also body type. And that's actually a big part of what they do day to day. So
Yeah.
that one simple nuance of if I know how I'm supposed to move and I start moving that way, that will create this beautiful balance of my hormones where I literally don't need to add anything. And sometimes just starting there is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such good. I think it's good news for so many people who are feeling very overwhelmed by this stage of life and that it has to be something super complicated. It's maybe like you said, you're treating the wrong problem. You're
Yeah.
doing the wrong thing. And I had two more questions. So one of them is about DHEA
Yeah.
because that's a supplement I think a lot of women in perimenopause are told to take. For me, it's always, and anytime I've tried to take it, it like makes my testosterone really sky high. So I'm
Yeah.
like, um, super, super low dose if I'm going to take it, which I'm not right now. And then I have a friend of mine, we were having this conversation last week because she's like a blood chemistry expert and she's really into getting into all this stuff. And she's like, girl, I tried DHEA and I tested my estrogen. My estradiol was like off the freaking charts, and
Yeah.
testosterone was still like at the at the bottom. She's like, I'm like, I'm gonna ask Cash when we talk when we talk. So,
It goes back to the same thing. You add it into your body. Now there's a raw ingredient.
mm,
Now genes come along and determine which pathway it goes down. There's a gene pathway called CYP19A1 that eventually will take any upstream hormone like DHEA, progesterone, testosterone, and make sure it fills the estrogen bucket. And
mm,
some women do that far too aggressively. And so you think you're getting the benefit of DHEA, and you probably will, very short time window before
mm,
these genes start converting it. And we have seen that some women, their estrogen dominant symptoms increase without adding estrogen. because just
Hmm.
because there's one gene, CYP19A1, it just ends up taking all this stuff and filling this bucket. And so that's probably how your friend is wired. So there's two options. She doesn't take DHEA, or she can take the DHEA with an aromatase inhibitor that slows down the CYP19A1 gene so she has a greater, longer exposure to the tool she wants before it gets converted. And they're very basic, simple things like DIM, which is a broccoli extract, will slow down
Hmm.
the CYP19A1 gene. Calcium diglucarate will slow it down, right? So you really don't, and this is going back to what we said, hey, couple pills solve the problem. We just need to
Right.
know what problem to solve. Her problem is she aromatases way too fast. So let's slow that down. Now she can actually benefit from the DHEA.
Yeah. And that's why I think I'm super cautious about telling people to take pregnenolone. Also, I'd
Okay.
love to hear your thoughts on that. But
It's,
someone told me to take pregnenolone because my testosterone was on the low side. And I'm like, dude, how do you know it's going to turn into testosterone? Like, who's to say that my body's not going to be like, oh, cortisol? Like, why
it's,
would
it's
I, why would I do that?
all the same. What any hormone intervention require, when I host master classes, webinars, whatever, the one thing I'm sure to tell people that if you are a woman that's considering taking hormones, that's the one person where I put my foot down and say, you have to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone else is like, you can learn, you can optimize, you can whatever, but don't take hormones without knowing your DNA first.
Yeah.
That's
Agree.
like a must. And I don't understand why it's not done as a must for everybody. Because the assumption is, add it, you have it. No, we're all different. Some of us, we get lucky, you just happen to have the right gene pathways, it goes down where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Likely not what's going to happen. There's going to be some trial and error, messing around. So that's the one area where I'd say don't add hormones without knowing your DNA first.
Yeah, I agree with that because you'll see if you go on Instagram and you look at the comments, you're going to see some women that are like, I can't take hormones. I feel terrible with them. I'm glad they helped you, but they've been terrible for me. Or this changed my life. This was amazing. And it's like across the board, you see people taking the same exact thing and having completely different reactions. And it's not necessarily because that thing is inherently bad.
Yeah.
It's like, what is your body doing it? How does it see it and what is it doing with it? It's a broader conversation than just like, no, don't take this, or it's so much more deep than I think people are
Yeah.
aware of. I don't think they know.
Yeah, they don't know. And the belief is that hormone is a hormone. Like, who would think that if I took some vitamin C that it turns into vitamin E? Why would you
Mm,
think that, right? Just the
right.
same, who would think that if I took estrogen, it turns into something else? We don't
Right.
consider that there's just metabolism or conversion that happens. And that's the
Yeah.
big gray area that's not addressed,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the last question I had what is kind of unrelated, but I just did a podcast on methylene blue.
Mm.
And I would talk with Dr. Scott, who owns prescriptions. We're talking about all the different, there's a lot of people saying it's really bad. You should never take it. And then I'm like, oh, I got to ask Cash about this one because I'm pretty sure that genetically it could be a complete disaster for certain people. I do well with it. I love it. I don't take
Yeah.
it all the time because I know I have a slow comp, but like if I have a bad night of sleep, if I'm flying, if I feel like I'm coming down with something, those are all rare things, but they happen. Methylene blue, and I feel awesome again.
Yeah.
But genetically, from your viewpoint, how do you feel
So
about this
genetically,
topic?
yeah, the mitochondrial genes, you're not doing so well.
Hmm.
Right. So your body's ability to create cellular energy, remove oxidants from the cell, recover is all like you should not be doing like cardiovascular training, for example, just not the best for you. It would age you a little too fast.
Hmm.
So because that pathway isn't working so well, you would respond really well to methylene blue. It's a mitochondrial upregulator, it would make you feel really good because you're starting from a lower place, right? So it's easy for you to feel the benefit. Now, I don't think there's anyone that where methylene bed is like methylene blue, sorry, will hurt them.
Hmm.
But there's some people that just don't need it as much as other people. Like you need it.
Yeah.
This is why you need the hydrogen. This is why you
Yep.
need mitochondrial intervention to feel baseline. You're living below baseline, right?
Yep.
Genetically. Now, if you
Yep.
already have great mitochondrial genetics, it's not going to hurt you to use methylene blue. But once again, are we solving the right problem? Maybe there's some
Right.
other priority that you actually need to work on, like your hormones, like your detox, like your neurochemicals, and this is not where your problem's coming from. And this person who does really good with genetics around mitochondrial function needs that cycling on and off much more often, needs shorter windows. They just don't need it as much. So you're adding a fuel for a job that's already being done really well, not necessary,
Yeah.
right?
That's helpful. Yeah. Cause again, it's a one size fits all kind of an answer
Yeah.
that's being floated around out there. And I'm very cautious of any one size fits all answer for most people other than like sleep, sunlight, food. We all
Yeah.
need those things.
Yeah. For sure.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited about the next masterclass. If you want to come to the webinar, that'll be July 10th, I believe. We'll have a link in the
Yeah.
show notes. Anything else people need to know, Cash?
No, I would say if you come to the webinar, the intention is I know you guys are all listening, but you probably have individual stories and questions. And so let's do it. We'll meet up live online and bring your questions, bring your thoughts, bring your stories, and wherever you're stuck, and let's talk about it. And anybody can get in the chat and start talking, and I'll address your personal stuff. I'll
Yeah.
also talk to you about, master classes we've done and how do you actually get in and do this type of work. You
Yeah.
can hear that there's one thing to get the genetic data, but there's also a layer of interpretation, which is really the most important part, right? How do you
Yeah.
personalize the delivery of the data? So we'll talk about that too, but show up to the webinar, bring your questions, whatever your thoughts are, wherever you're stuck, whatever. And maybe you're not stuck. Maybe it's just like, hey, I'm good, but I don't know if what I'm doing I even need. I'm a biohacker. I'm doing all this stuff, and I don't know, is it helping me or not? Show up. Let's
Right.
talk about it, and I'll see you guys there live.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for it. And if they can't show up live, I believe last when we emailed out the
Yeah.
replay, if they just make sure you register, and I think we send the replay out.
Yeah.
So I know that question will come in the comments. So as long as you're signed up, you should be able to get access to the replay, and we'll send it out to everybody.
Cool.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again for coming on today.
Pleasure. Good seeing you again, Sarah.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for listening to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. Just a quick little reminder, this is not medical advice nor meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a healthcare practitioner. And if you enjoy the show, please head on over to Apple or Spotify to leave the show up to a 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, please leave us a like, leave us a comment. I really appreciate you for being here, for listening to the show, and your support means the world to me as I continue to try to pull guests from around the world to bring you informative content to empower you to make decisions about your own health. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.